Good evening, my friends. So today, it was a nice cold winter's day. It's definitely getting that Christmas feel outside. There's a lot of decorations going on outside and all of that and what have you. Today I'm going to be doing a little video on something that I've been sort of thinking about lately. And this is about, when you talk about things in, let's say, a biblical perspective, there's always the number one commandment, which is, worship no idols, worship God. God is the supreme being. Worshiping anything else is the greatest sin. And when you're talking to people who are, I don't want to even just say, sorry, there's like a bug here. I've had these little fruit flies all over the place that are driving me nuts. I don't know where the hell they came from. I literally cleaned my apartment yesterday, like spotless. And now all of a sudden they're showing up. A little bit bizarre. But as I was saying, when you talk to people, I won't say atheist. I'll just say, people who question that mode of life, let's just say the traditional, the monotheistic Judeo-Christian, and I guess you can throw Islam in there as well, is that, God is just so like egotistical and only thinks about himself, or he only thinks about like idolatry, like we shouldn't worship anything else. Oh, he's so full of himself. I mean, you have murder, which is like only later on in the Ten Commandments. I mean, surely you would think that would be a more important or more relevant sin not to commit. Why is idolatry the number one be-all of all sins? And there's a very clear answer to that question. Very obvious answer to that question. First, I'll talk about how the reason why these sort of commandments, so to speak, they exist to our benefit. They aren't there to appease some master up in the sky. What we do is irrelevant in the grand scheme of the universe and of existence and everything. And this is proven by science, by how enormously large the universe is, that we're really just incredibly insignificant. So we followed these rules allegedly to attain a higher sense of self and attain a higher sense of fulfillment and happiness. The reason why idolatry is the number one sin, and why I would agree with that, because for a while I've heard it and I would read it and I was kind of like iffy about it, like I get it. And then I never really understood the concept of idolatry until I understood the concept of attachment. And you learn about attachment more in the Eastern realms of things. And in the Western religion, it's known as idolatry. But then when you translate it into Buddhism and Taoism and all sorts of other Eastern concepts, that quickly turns into attachment. Attachment of yourself to various things, to various modes of living. And part of understanding the universe and understanding our lives in general is that everything is transitory. Everything is in a consistent state of change. And to worship idols, to commit idolatry, which isn't necessarily some external god or deity, like the sun god, or to worship the planets or some weird tribal thing. It's really anything. It could be a circumstance in your life to where you're frustrated with how things are, is a form of idolatry, because you are asserting that the way the universe is not exactly the way you want it to. You're attaching yourself to a concept or an idea of that this is how the way the world is, or how the way the world should be. And we don't really know anything about how the way the world should be. We're kind of taking a step back from that and sort of just experiencing it as life unfolds for us. And I think that idolatry is essentially the form of attachment. And having said that, why do we consider that to be, the biggest sin, the biggest, how can I say it? Just the biggest detraction from how to live our lives in the best way possible. And when you look at things like the 7 sins and other things like that, you realize that they are all rooted in attachment to the way things are supposed to be. When you think of lust, you're attaching to your sexual desires, you're attached to that immediate gratification. The same thing goes for gluttony. You're attached to that immediate gratification of always wanting more food. It goes on to greed, it goes on to wrath, it goes on to jealousy, to pride. You're attached to yourself, to your ego, to your physical body, which of course is transitory. Your body's going to die eventually. This is a fact. To attach yourself to your body, to your ego, to your current physical self is a form of illness. It's a form of illness manifested that keeps you from your highest potential. And that's attachment, and that's idolatry. That's all connected. And when I started seeing things in that context, it made a lot more sense as to why we would see things like idolatry as being the number one sin, the number one commandment. Don't idolize things, because we need to realize that everything is in a process of change. Everything's transitory. To be a person who worships any sort of sense of time, or a person who acknowledges that this is supposed to be permanent, or someone who is constantly reflecting on the past or anxious about the future, they're all related to that sense of idolatry. They're all attached to a mode of living which isn't current with the state of change. And when you're current with the state of change, when you're a part of that existence, you are no longer attached to things, right? You are just within the flow. You're moving forward in a way where you're just walking the path in the present moment. You're not thinking about the past or the future, or worrying about this or that, or comparing this or that, which is also related to attachment and related to idolatry. On the other side of this camera, actually, on like this side of the wall, I have some motivational poster quotes, things that I just like put up there. Not for any like strong reason, really. I just kind of like to have like certain things up there, just sort of like give me a visual cue, reminder when I start my day. And I recently just watched through the most recent, well, not most recent, but just like the Star Wars original trilogy, and then the prequels as well. I haven't really kept up to tabs with the new Star Wars movies. I don't really find them that appealing, to be honest. They're kind of very, they're like the Marvel movies, just very corporate, kind of like a Ferris wheel type of thing. They're not very interesting. But I printed one of Yoda's quotes. I was thinking of, because after I was watching the movie, I was like, oh, I'm going to post like a little Yoda quote thing, like really cheesy. One of the more popular ones is, do or do not, there is no try. Everyone knows that. But there was actually one from Revenge of the Sith, which I think is a lot more poignant. I don't know. But because it's part of the prequel trilogy, no one really cares about those, or they kind of disregard them as not being as meritable as the original trilogy, which I kind of disagree. I think they're all... both are good in their own respects. I grew up with the prequels. They're part of my generation. So to me, I think the reason why you see like older people sort of gravitate towards the original trilogy is because that's what they saw when they were kids, and everything you see as a kid is always better than what you see as an adult, because everything's fresh and new and innovative. So I can see why they didn't like the prequels. I watched the prequels when I was like, from around 5 to 10 was when I was like into Star Wars. I would say a little bit after that too. I think it was like 12 also. Like, I don't know, that age range was when I was like watching the prequels, really into them. And those were the movies I really liked. But I'm getting off topic here. So I have this little Yoda quote from Revenge of the Sith. And that's attachment leads to jealousy, the shadow of greed, that is. Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. This is when Yoda is sort of talking to Anakin, who's afraid of losing Padme to death. And you know, in the prequels, you sort of, this theme is put on a lot, this theme of attachment, more so than the original trilogy. You can sort of see Anakin's fall into the dark side and all that, because it's merely just about his attachment to aspects of his life that he doesn't want to change. He doesn't want to acknowledge the fact that at first it was his mother dying. He didn't want to acknowledge the fact that this was just a part of his life. It was a tragic ending, but he didn't want to accept that as reality. And now you see the same thing with Padme. He didn't want to accept that reality, and he thought he could forcefully will his, forcefully command his will into the universe to make sure that Padme lives, or that he's the most powerful, and that he brings order to the universe. Like, this is his big thing, is that he wants to create order and make sure that there is one line of path, that he is the controller, right? That's why he creates the empire to begin with. And, all of that is part of this sense of attachment, this sense of idolatry. This is where wars and empires and huge suffering start from. It starts from this feeling that things as they are not good, so I'm going to create a new reality that I'm going to forcefully impose. I'm going to forcefully attach myself to this new mode of living, to this new mode of reality, which humans have that power to do. We have that power to manifest. It's obviously always temporary. There's no empire in the history of the world that has lasted forever. They've always fell at some point or another. Everyone always likens the Roman Empire, but the Roman Empire is just another empire from, history. There are plenty of other ones. There's the Ottoman Empire. There's the Mongolian Empire. There's, now you can consider the United States as an empire. It's always transitory. And we have these figureheads in history that think that they can create something eternal, or they can forcefully will into existence a reality that is forever, and it never works that way. You can think of people like Hitler, for instance, was attached to this perfect world that he wanted to create instead of, being a part of the world, which it's tricky to understand these and to go forward with this, but he was very much a person that was not satisfied with how the world was, and he thought he could forcefully change that, especially through violence and whatnot. But it all began from this sense of attachment, this attachment to a utopic world that he thought he could forcefully implement into the world instead of letting things come naturally. And I think that's the important concept to think about when not getting involved in idolatry, not getting attached to certain things, is just letting things evolve naturally. Because anytime you force something, you're going against what is already supposed to happen, right? There is a thread. Scientists have already discovered that there is actually a thread that connects everything in the universe together. I forget where it was or what the details were exactly, but you see these articles pop up now and again. But there is a thread connecting everything, and that involves time as well, that there is a thread connecting time. And you can either follow that thread, follow that way, follow the path of God or the universe, whatever you want to call it, and you can flow with that, or you can forcefully manifest a reality that is different from that. And you will succeed, because we are humans. We are part of a different source. Animals can't forcefully impose their reality, their will into the universe. Not as much. Maybe beavers or dolphins, but it's like to such a small degree. Humans can actually do crazy shit, but it will always be temporary. It will never last a long time because it's not in alignment with the natural order, the natural path. So yeah, that's all I really have to say. It's something I've been thinking about and sort of clarifying in my mind through deliberation lately. And I hope you have a wonderful evening. I'll see you next time.